I never thought a quiet Thursday evening would be the moment my 3-year relationship ended. Natalie and I had been planning our wedding for months, sending save the dates and choosing venues. But lately something felt different. Her calls grew shorter, our dinners quieter. When she finally sat across from me at our kitchen table, eyes fixed on her untouched coffee, I already knew. "My parents think you are not good enough for me, Robert. We need a break." I calmly replied, "I understand," hiding the hurricane inside me. Before we continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever been blindsided by someone you trusted. I first met Natalie at the West Side Gallery, where my buddy Jake was showcasing his photography. I was there early, setting up the sound system as a favor. That is when she walked in, tall, graceful, with auburn hair catching the gallery lights. She was not supposed to be there yet, but as the gallery owner's niece, she had come early to preview the exhibition. "Need a hand with those cables?" she asked, smiling. I noticed her designer watch and perfectly manicured nails, but was more impressed by her willingness to kneel in her expensive dress to help me organize the tangled mess of wires. We talked for hours that night, long after the exhibition closed. I learned she came from old money. Her father owned a chain of luxury hotels. Her mother was from an established East Coast family. Meanwhile, I had grown up in a middle-class neighborhood in Denver, the son of a high school teacher and a nurse. My sound engineering business was growing, but nowhere near the wealth her family possessed. None of that seemed to matter during our first year together. We bonded over obscure indie bands and our shared dream of visiting every national park. Natalie loved that I could identify bird calls on our hikes, and that I made her laugh with terrible dad jokes. I loved her enthusiasm for life, her kindness to strangers, and how she could walk into any room and immediately make friends. When I got the contract to engineer sound for a small music festival, Natalie cheered louder than anyone. "This is just the beginning," she said, eyes bright with certainty. "You are going to be the best in the industry." Her belief in me felt like rocket fuel. After 18 months of dating, we decided to move in together. We found an apartment halfway between her marketing firm and my studio. It was nothing fancy, but it became our sanctuary. Sunday mornings making pancakes, weeknight dinners on our small balcony, arguing good-naturedly over whose turn it was to take out the trash. It was beautifully ordinary and perfect. Meeting her family was the first sign that our worlds might not merge seamlessly. Their mansion in Westchester had more bathrooms than our apartment had rooms. Her father, Harold, shook my hand with the precise pressure of someone evaluating a business prospect rather than welcoming a potential son-in-law. Her mother, Elizabeth, asked pointed questions about my long-term career strategy and seemed disappointed by my honest answers about the ups and downs of being self-employed. "They will warm up to you," Natalie assured me afterward. "They are just protective." Despite the rocky first impression, I was certain of my love for Natalie. 2 years into our relationship, I took her to the beach where we had our first real date. As the sun set over the Pacific, I knelt in the sand and asked her to marry me. The ring was modest by her family's standards, a vintage sapphire that had belonged to my grandmother. But when Natalie cried and said yes, I believed we could overcome any obstacle. We agreed to split the wedding costs despite her family's offer to pay for everything. "This is our wedding, not theirs," she insisted, and I loved her fiercer for it. We opened a joint account where we would each deposit money for venue payments, catering deposits, and all the other expenses. We chose a date the following spring and began planning our future together. 2 kids, maybe 3, a house with a yard, where I could build a recording studio in the garage. Every night as we fell asleep wrapped around each other, I marveled at my luck in finding her. The changes began so gradually I barely noticed at first. Natalie started canceling our Tuesday movie nights to attend family dinners I was not invited to. "Just Dad and his business partners," she would explain. "You would be bored anyway." Her comments about my career shifted from enthusiastic support to gentle nudging. "Have you thought about corporate work? Sound design for commercials pays really well," she would suggest. Or, "My dad's friend needs someone to upgrade the audio systems in his hotel chain. Should I put you in touch?" I appreciated her connections but loved my independence and creative projects. "I am doing well," I would remind her. "The studio is booked solid for the next 3 months." "I know, but do you really want to be setting up microphones when you are 50? She would counter, her smile, not quite reaching her eyes. Our social circles had always been somewhat separate, but now gatherings with her friends became increasingly uncomfortable. At a rooftop party hosted by her college roommate, I overheard someone ask Natalie if I was still doing that band thing. Another time at a charity gala I attended as her +1, her father's business associate looked straight through me when Natalie introduced us. The pressure about prenuptial agreements began 6 months before our wedding date. It is just smart planning, her mother said during a tense Sunday brunch. Harold and I have one. It does not mean you do not love each other. Natalie looked uncomfortable, but did not disagree. We can at least talk about it, right? She asked me later. I agreed to discuss it, though the implication stung that our marriage might be temporary, that I might want her family's money if things went wrong. The wedding venue suddenly became a point of contention. We had booked a charming converted barn upstate, but Natalie began sending me links to exclusive resorts and country clubs. My cousin Heather got married at the Langham, she said. The photos were incredible. Each new option came with a significantly higher price tag. I increased my monthly contributions to our wedding account, taking fewer days off and accepting jobs I would normally have passed on. It is worth it, I told myself, ignoring how my savings were dwindling, while Natalie's lifestyle remained unchanged. Intimacy between us diminished. Natalie stayed up late answering work emails and kept her phone face down when around me. Her texts became brief, functional rather than affectionate. I told myself it was just wedding stress. The breaking point should have been the dinner at her parents' house 3 months before our wedding. Harold cornered me while Natalie and her mother discussed flower arrangements. "What is your 10-year plan, son?" he asked, swirling expensive bourbon in a crystal tumbler. Natalie is used to a certain lifestyle. When I explained my plans to expand my business, possibly hire staff and take on larger venues, he looked disappointed. "Sounds like you will still be hustling for work into your 40s, he said, not bothering to hide his disdain. Natalie deserves stability. I wanted to defend myself, to point out that I had never missed a bill payment, that my business was growing steadily, that his daughter had fallen in love with me, not my bank account. Instead, I swallowed my pride and nodded politely. Later that week, my friend Jake voiced what I had been afraid to acknowledge. "Something is off with Natalie," he said as we grabbed beers after I finished a recording session. "She barely looked at you at the cookout last weekend, and she has been posting weird cryptic quotes on social media." I defended her reflexively. She is under pressure from her family. The wedding planning is stressful. The excuses sounded hollow even to my own ears. The conversation happened on a Thursday night. Natalie came home late, which had become the norm. I had made dinner her favorite pasta, but she claimed she had already eaten. Instead of joining me at the table, she sat across from me with a cup of coffee she never drank. "We need to talk," she said, and the familiar dread those words always carry washed over me. "My parents think you are not good enough for me, for our family. And honestly, I am starting to think they might be right. I think we need a break." I had imagined this moment, rehearsed angry speeches and emotional pleas, but sitting there facing her cool detachment, I found myself strangely calm. "I understand," I said, surprised by my steady voice. "How long of a break are you thinking?" Her relief at my acceptance was obvious and painful. "Just until we figure things out. Maybe a month or 2. I can stay at my parents' place." I nodded, asked practical questions about logistics, and helped her pack a small bag. When the door closed behind her, I sat in our suddenly empty apartment, numb rather than devastated. The email came the next morning, not from Natalie, but from our wedding planner. She had accidentally copied me on a response to Natalie's request to cancel our venue and catering. The email referenced your cancellation request from 3 weeks ago and included details about refund policies. 3 weeks. Natalie had canceled our wedding 3 weeks before telling me we needed a break. With a sick feeling in my stomach, I began looking through our shared digital calendar email accounts we had access to and social media. The story unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. There were deleted emails I recovered from cloud storage conversations with her ex-boyfriend Trevor, the son of her father's business partner. Dinner meetings that were definitely not work-related. In one email, she complained about my lack of ambition and how her parents never let her forget she could have had Trevor. The joint account for wedding expenses showed withdrawals for items clearly not wedding-related: a weekend spa trip, shopping at high-end boutiques, dinner at restaurants I had never been to. When I cross-referenced the dates, they matched times. Natalie had told me she was working late or attending family functions. Jake came over when I called, bringing beer and a shoulder to lean on. I knew something was wrong, but man, I never thought she would go this far, he said, helping me organize what I had discovered. The final blow came when I found out through a mutual friend that Natalie had been telling people I had cheated on her, a complete fabrication that explained why some of our acquaintances had been cold toward me recently. Social media confirmed what I already knew. Photos of Natalie at a concert on a night she had claimed to be at a girls-only dinner. Trevor's arm visible in the corner of the frame. A check-in at a restaurant I knew was Trevor's favorite on an evening when she had told me she was having dinner with her parents. That night, a text arrived. "I think it is best if you move out by the end of the month." My parents can help cover your portion of the lease termination. I allowed myself one night of grief, angry tears, too much whiskey, and a long rambling call with Jake, where I cycled through disbelief, rage, and heartbreak. But when morning came, something had shifted. The pain was still there, but now accompanied by clarity and a strange sense of purpose. My first call was to a lawyer, a college friend who had gone into family law. Though we were not married yet, I wanted to understand my rights regarding our shared property, and most importantly, the joint wedding account. Good news, she said after hearing my situation. Since you can document your contributions to the account, and its explicit purpose was for wedding expenses, you have every right to withdraw your portion. I would suggest doing that sooner rather than later. I spent the day methodically gathering evidence, bank statements, showing my deposits, text conversations about wedding plans, screenshots of the expenses that were clearly not wedding-related. I created a spreadsheet calculating exactly what I had contributed minus my share of legitimate wedding expenses that had been paid. Finding a new apartment became my mission. I took a personal day and viewed 5 places, signing a lease on a small one-bedroom closer to my studio. The rent was lower than what I had been paying for our shared place, which felt like a small victory. That afternoon, I went to our bank and withdrew exactly the amount I had calculated was rightfully mine from the wedding account. No more, no less. The teller raised an eyebrow at the size of the withdrawal, but processed it without question when I showed him my ID and account verification. I deposited the money in my personal account immediately. Next came the digital separation, methodically removing her access to my Netflix, Spotify, and other subscriptions we had shared. I changed passwords on accounts she knew, made new email filters, and unlinked our phone plans. Each small act of separation felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I was determined to avoid drama. No angry confrontations, no public social media posts, no bad-mouthing Natalie to our mutual friends. When people asked, I simply said, "We grew apart and wanted different things." The dignity in my response felt like armor. To our closest friends, I was more honest but still factual. Natalie canceled our wedding weeks ago without telling me, and has been seeing Trevor. We are done, and I am moving on. No emotional appeals, no asking them to choose sides. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into projects, staying late at the studio, and taking on challenging jobs that required total focus. A week after Natalie asked for our break, I landed a contract to engineer sound for a nationally touring indie band, the biggest opportunity of my career. At Jake's insistence, I also started therapy. "You need to process this properly, man," he said. "Otherwise it will mess up your future relationships." He was right. The weekly sessions helped me understand that Natalie's actions reflected her character, not my worth. The gym became another outlet. Each morning before work, I channeled my hurt and anger into deadlifts and sprints. The physical exhaustion was cleansing, and slowly my reflection in the mirror began to look less haunted. Natalie's reaction came exactly as I expected. First, confusion when she tried to access the wedding account, then a flurry of increasingly angry text messages demanding to know what I had done. I responded with a single text: "I have withdrawn my documented contributions, minus my portion of paid wedding expenses. The spreadsheet with all calculations has been emailed to you." Her father called next, voice cold, with barely controlled rage. "You had no right to take that money," he said. "Natalie tells me you stole from her." "With all due respect, sir," I replied, "I only took what was mine. The account was for our wedding, the one your daughter canceled 3 weeks before telling me we needed a break. I have documentation of every penny I put in and took out. If you feel the need to pursue this legally, my lawyer will be happy to share that documentation with yours." The threats never materialized. I suspect Harold, businessman, that he was recognized a losing proposition when he saw one. Our mutual friends divided largely along predictable lines, with her wealthy college crowd taking her side and my creative industry colleagues supporting me. A few surprised me by reaching out with messages of support, including Natalie's cousin, who confided that to me. She did the same thing to her high school boyfriend. The family pushes her to date within their social circle. Within 2 months, Natalie and Trevor were officially together on social media. A month after that, she was sporting an engagement ring that probably cost more than my car. I heard through the grapevine that the wedding was being planned at one of her father's hotels. My financial recovery was slower but steady. With reduced rent and more focus on work, I rebuilt my savings. The tour with the indie band led to more high-profile jobs, and by the 6-month mark I was earning more than I ever had before. Dating again was challenging. The first few attempts were disasters. I was guarded, suspicious of kindness, searching for hidden agendas where there were none. But slowly, with time and more therapy, I began to open up again. Nothing serious yet, but the possibility no longer seemed remote. I ran into Natalie and Trevor at a restaurant downtown almost exactly 6 months after our break. She looked polished, as always draped in designer clothes, but there was a tightness around her eyes I recognized from our last months together. Trevor kept checking his phone during their meal, barely engaging with her. She saw me as I was leaving, and for a brief moment something like regret flashed across her face. That night I realized how much I had grown. The encounter had left me sad, not for what I had lost, but for what Natalie might never find a relationship based on genuine connection rather than social expectations and material security. For the first time, I felt something close to gratitude for how things had ended. The pain had forged a stronger, wiser version of myself. The journey back to myself was neither quick nor easy. For months I questioned my judgment. How had I missed the signs? Had anything between us been real? Therapy helped me see that trust is always a risk, but one worth taking despite the potential for pain. Financial lessons came hard and fast. I became more cautious with joint finances, more attentive to legal protections. Not out of cynicism, but wisdom. Love should not be transactional, but it also should not leave you vulnerable to exploitation. The most profound change was in how I valued myself. Natalie's family had made me feel inadequate because I did not fit their definition of success. Now I recognized that their values were not mine. Success meant creative fulfillment, integrity, genuine connections, not the size of my bank account or the prestige of my address. I had to confront an uncomfortable question: would Natalie and I have lasted if our socioeconomic backgrounds had been the same? Perhaps. But the real issue was not our different starting points, but our different destinations. She ultimately wanted the safety of her parents' world. I wanted to build something of my own. Strangely, I found myself grateful for the experience. Not in a cliched everything happens for a reason way, but because the collapse of that relationship revealed strengths I never knew I possessed. I had faced betrayal with dignity, rebuilt my life with determination, and emerged with greater clarity about what I truly wanted. My perspective on love transformed completely. I no longer looked for someone to complete me or validate my worth. Instead, I sought genuine compatibility, shared values, mutual respect, and the ability to grow together through challenges. 6 months after the breakup, I met Allison at a music festival where I was working. A pediatric nurse with a wicked sense of humor and absolute integrity, she approached relationships with the same straightforward honesty I had come to value. It is still early days, but for the first time since Natalie, I can envision a future with someone. Finding forgiveness was perhaps the hardest part. Not because Natalie deserved it, but because I needed it. Carrying anger only weighed me down. I had to accept that she made choices based on her own limitations and fears, just as we all do. Life has taught me that people reveal who they are through their actions, not their words. Natalie said she loved me, while secretly canceling our future. She claimed to value fairness, while spending our shared savings on herself. The lesson was painful, but essential: trust behavior over promises, patterns over apologies. I wonder sometimes if any of you watching have faced similar betrayals, or had to rebuild after a relationship collapsed. Have you ever discovered your worth only after someone tried to diminish it? Leave a comment below sharing your experience, or any advice you might have for others going through similar situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are more than enough just as they are. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings.